Rightio folks, so what we're on with today, as you probably know because you've read this video title, is changing the lighting arrangements in Char the Bearded Dragon's enclosure. Because if you sort of look up round the top, all the lights are just sort of splayed about and higgledy-piggledy, and they're not really arranged to properly achieve the light and shade method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of them out of there, pretty much, and rearrange them so that they do what I want them to. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take out one of the two tungsten halogen lamps, which is there's one in each of these domes, because the intensity of infrared under one lamp, if that's sufficient and covers a large enough area, there's no real point having a second one doing that. But in replacement of the one that I'm going to get shot of, I am going to add a spot LED, so that increases the visible light intensity to sunlight-like levels at the basking spot. Oh, and if you're wondering why I've got a coat on before we get into this, that would be because it's 2 degrees, everybody! Yeah, so I mean, you can sort of see what I was on about a bit better now, because you can see I've got these two lamps here, but then everything here is just all sprawled out. I've got this long UVB tube which runs along the front and is just sort of not concerned with anything. And I've got the Jungle Dawn LED bar which is going over here. And so everything's just, it's just all a bit of a mess really. So what I'm going to do is organise it all down here. Right then, so having taken most of the lights out of Char's enclosure, aside from that one, and also this one, which I'm just using to work, I'm ready to start putting them all back in again. The first lamp I'm putting in here is a 40-watt spot LED by Dasku. This is going to produce visible light intensities localised to the basking spot like those associated with mid-morning and afternoon sunlight, so will contribute significantly to the warming of the dragon when he basks, and will play an important role in just stimulating basking. An LED like this, or alternatively a metal halide, is essential for diurnal basking herps. So, quick little update as to where we are with all this. You can see that I've got the majority of the lamps back in. I've got the LED here, which provides, is going to be providing a quite decent visible light intensity at the basking spot. I've got the 2-foot UVB lamp, which is going to provide some of the high UV index at the basking zone. Then behind that we've got the second UV lamp, which is 4 foot long and goes right the way down there, only you'll see there's no reflector on it until just this end. And so that's sort of going to provide a more gentle gradient in the sort of in the UV index, and also it's going to ensure that there is a real nice peak here, and this is sort of meant to be a sunbeam, if you sort of like, with all the different wavelengths. And then we do have our Jungle Dawn LED bar going right over the plant, so the plant will still get it's a Sansevieria that'll still get plenty of light and should grow decently for us. And then obviously it does just go over here and meet up with the others to improve the visible light intensity here a little bit more. Now I have got this little mini LED strip. It's only 7 watts. Not really doing very much for Char in this enclosure, it's just so diddy. And down there I do have the warm white LED strips, and they're only 1 watt each, so 4 watts in total. And I don't think I'm going to put them back in this enclosure, just because it's going to take a long time and it isn't really going to offer anything at all to Char, who is asleep down there. He's in brumation. I should probably mention that. But yeah, what I think I'm going to go and do with those little lamps is stick them in the Chinese leopard snake enclosures, because they could probably do with a little bit more visible light in them. So I'll set about doing that probably next week. I'm not going to do it now, and I probably won't show it on video because it's not that interesting. But with Char's setup, what we've got to do is just get everything wired up. I'll sort out all the timers, and then I'll just turn it on so you can see what it looks like. And there we have it. So poor Char, hibernating down there, is probably not too happy with all the noise I've been making. But I have had to do this now because it's the first weekend in January currently, and Char is going to be waking up and be running around like mad in probably less than 2 weeks now. So getting this all up and sorted and making sure everything is working while he is asleep is just a lot easier than doing it when he's awake in a fortnight, and then I'd have to put him in a box to do all this messing about. So if I just take you on a little look around what we've done, we've got this spot LED here, which is on and immensely bright. That's why it's so bright here, and I can put my hand there and that feels nice and toasty. This is the tungsten halogen lamp in here. That is probably too low wattage, because if I just put my hand under it, it really feels quite weak, so I might stick 100 watt in that, change it out, and see what happens. But then the UV lamps and the LED and the Jungle Dawn LED bar, that is what I'm really happy with, because rather than just being all wonky and splayed randomly about the enclosure, they're all sort of all nice and reflected over the basking zone, and then trailing off over here, so it's like going to be that nice UV gradient. And once the lamps have been on a bit and whatever, I will take a measure of the UV indices and I'll tell you what those are, just for your own interest. But anyway, that's enough of me rabbiting on. I will wait for a couple of weeks for Char to wake up. Hopefully he'll be awake before I go to university, and then I'll finish this video off with some nice shots of him basking and doing all dragon stuff. Okay then guys, so it's a fortnight after you last saw me yabbering, and as predicted, Char the bearded dragon is finally out of brumation. So even though Char hasn't been fully awake for even a week yet, the way that he has been using his new lighting rig has been absolutely perfect. On the very first day that he was up, he was down at the other end of the enclosure, then he slowly made his way over here and was waiting at the basking zone, and because of the way that the lamps are timed, different things come on at different times, which I'll go through in a minute. But the tungsten halogen lamp there comes on first. Then I'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, basically the spot LED came on, and within seconds of it coming on, he moved himself so that he was directly in the place that was being lit by it, which just completely for me illustrates why getting the visible light intensity at the basking zone is so critically important. So what I'm going to do now is I will give Char some dubia roaches, his first cockroaches of 2021, and whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to once again run through all of the lighting rig from the top. Firstly, I'm going to tell you what each of the lamps are and what their role is in replicating sunlight, and then I'll move on to how I've got the lamps timed so that they better simulate the changes in sunlight conditions throughout the day. The first lamp I'll talk about is the 40 watt Dasku spot LED, because lamps like this have traditionally been absent from vivarium lighting. As stated earlier, the point of this lamp is to offer a real boost of visible light near the basking spot, which will stimulate basking and contribute significantly to warming the dragon.
For this purpose, I could also have used a 35 watt metal halide or one of the spot LEDs branded for Reptiles, but the Dasku LED I got off Amazon was one heck of a lot cheaper, so that's what I'm going with for now until I've evidence to support doing otherwise. The next lamp to consider is the 100 watt tungsten halogen lamp. The role of this one is to offer useful infrared, that is to say infrared A and infrared B, in a composition and intensity close to that found in sunlight. Despite what the marketing tells you, tungsten halogen lamps are better at this than carbon filament lamps. Note that I'm not dimming this lamp at all with a thermostat or otherwise, because the point of the lamp is to offer useful infrared, not control temperatures.
With that being said, I do have the tungsten halogen lamp on a thermostat so that it'll turn off if the enclosure is becoming dangerously hot, but you must realise that this is only a safety measure. The thermostat will not affect the output of the lamp in ordinary circumstances. This is quite a subtle concept I'll be elaborating in an upcoming video.
The third lamp to consider is the Jungle Dawn LED bar, which has the simple purpose of producing a background visible light intensity so that the vivarium isn't just dark away from the spot LED at the basking area. The fourth and fifth lamps are both T5 UVB tubes. Their purpose is to offer UVB with the same intensity as that in the sunlight that dragons were basking in nature, so now you will see that all of the lamps in the enclosure have been chosen to reproduce the intensity of a different fraction of sunlight. Visible light for the LEDs, useful infrared for the tungsten halogen lamp, and UVB for the T5s. None of the lamps are involved with temperature control, as this is something completely different to lighting, which I'll address in a future video. I could have used one rather than two separate T5 UVB tubes in order to provide UVB, but using two gives me the ability to time them separately, and so ramp up the UV intensity throughout the day, again as would occur in nature. Where UVB provision differs from the provision of useful infrared and visible light is that we have a simple way to measure UVB intensity using a Solometer 6.5. This gives us a readout of UVB intensity in terms of the UV index, or in units of UVI. In my dragon's enclosure, the UVI is 4 to 5 at the basking spot and trails off to nothing at the opposite end of the enclosure. This brings me to point out that all wavelengths should be offered in a gradient so that the dragon can self-regulate its exposure to them, and this gradient should be common for all wavelengths, hence why the lamps are all set up to offer the peak intensities at a single area, the basking spot. Thinking now about timing lamps, I have them turning on and off in the sequence shown on screen. Why I've got it set up like this I have discussed at length in another video, but the main point is that the longest wavelengths, i.e. infrared offered by the tungsten halogen lamp, peak earliest and fade latest, and the shortest wavelengths, i.e. UVB offered by the T5s, peak last and fade earliest, just like in nature.
The important thing to remember in all of this is that I am using the lamps to replicate sunlight, that is to provide radiation, not to control temperatures, because temperature control and heating are not the same thing as replicating sunlight. Heating and temperature control is something that I'll be addressing in a different video. As an extra note, I understand that there will be people watching this video who view my dragon's lighting rig as something extra or special, that I am somehow pushing boundaries which don't apply to most people who've just got a pet dragon in the bedroom. I mean, people have kept and bred dragons in captivity for years without all this fancy lighting, so is it actually worth it? My first response to this is that the studies being done in this area all point in the same direction. Herps have evolved many intricate interactions with each part of sunlight, be it vitamin D3 production due to UVB exposure, heating and stimulation from visible light, healing due to useful infrared, or one of the likely countless things we simply don't know about yet. In nature, they'd have all of these things, so it's up to us as keepers to make sure that they get them in Vivaria too. My second response to this is that, well, the proof is in the pudding.
So anyway guys, that pretty much wraps up this video. You might as well consider this video an updated bearded dragon lighting video. I did one midway through 2020 and now I would say that's sort of an obsolete video because we've learned so much as a hobby in that time that we have to update our practices, and you know, this is me doing that. But anyway, this is the end of the video, so if you haven't subscribed to the channel, then please do. Please leave a like on this video, and please leave any comments if you have any questions or concerns or anything like that. But for now, I've been JTB Reptiles, teaching you how to follow nature's example, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye guys!